Hello everyone, my name is Apostate. I'm making this short video to comment on this tweet that I saw online and Muslims' responses to it. A YouTuber and podcaster called Pearl from Just Pearly Things asked this question on Twitter. She asked, did Muhammad date a 9-year-old or not? Why is everyone arguing about this? He either did or he didn't. It seems like a very straightforward question, right? This is what Mohammed Hijab had to say. Date? Are you okay? If you want to ask questions about Islam, I suggest you do it with humility, otherwise I will remind you of the rejection you felt in your high school days quicker than you can fit into a size 14 shoe. What the fuck are you talking about? I don't usually swear, but this video is going to be full of them. So I talked about this crazy guy before. He is a Muslim preacher and he loves to threaten people. He loves to bang on his chest. He loves to be loud because he can't argue to save his life.
How dare you talk about the Quran, you imbecilic individuals? Sahaba were going to beat each other up because they didn't know. Is this one saying it? Get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here.
1 and 3, at least 1 and 4 now. You don't think we have gangsters? We have Muslim gangsters as well. And when you go ahead and attack the sacred symbols of Islam, although our approach is not to do so, we can't stop the gangsters from dealing with you or anyone else. We can't stop the Muslim gangsters.
Can you put your money where your mouth is? Are you like a child that you're just talking big but you can't actually act big? Let's put your money where your mouth is. Let's do a fight, a legal fight. Let's do it.
And these weak Muslims in the West, sending me emails and this, I'm losing my face and I'm a Hafiz. I'm losing, get the hell out. You are never a strong believer in the first place, you weakling. You're a weakling.
Let me humiliate you, bro. Just take the beating. Take the humiliation. I just want to fight. I just want to fight you. That's what it is. A legal fight. Let's do it. Let's not waste time. Let's not talk about debates. Let's not talk about this and that. You're an unworthy opponent.
Much like the Quran, he resorts to threats instead of reason. So the question she asked is very, very reasonable. And perhaps he could have said, there is no dating in Islam. Why are you asking if the Prophet dated someone? No, he didn't date someone. But the answer to the question is yes, he did marry a child at the age of 6 and then consummated the marriage at the age of 9. This is not my answer. This is what mainstream Sunni Islam says. It's mentioned in a lot of hadiths. It's mentioned in the seerah. And I've made so many videos about this already, dissecting the words of apologists who make excuses for this. So this is not some unknown conspiracy or accusation. This is, as far as Sunni Muslims are concerned, factually true. Muhammad married a 6-year-old. So sure, she was wrong about the dating part. He didn't date a 6-year-old. He groomed her. Let's be clear about the facts. Now, what the hell is Mohammed Hijab talking about here? Saying, I suggest you do it with humility. What was wrong with the way that she asked the question? Like, I really don't understand how she could have asked it any better than this. And this is what's infuriating. A lot of Muslims expect people to bend over backwards to not offend them, when the offensive thing is actually the action that happened. It's not how she asked the question. And look at what Hijab says. I will remind you of the rejection you felt in your high school days. What the f*** do you know about her high school days? And what does that even mean? Who says that she's looking for validation from you? Quicker than you can fit into a size 14 shoe. What do you know about her feet? And why do you care? I think this is a very common avenue for a lot of belligerent and vocal Muslims online, is to insult the woman who's making a comment. Insult her beauty, insult her intelligence. So I think what this man is trying to say is, you have very big feet, you ugly woman. What the f*** does that have to do with your prophet marrying a child? So she retweeted what he said, and she said, now I'm being threatened for asking a question, which is a fair response to this. Then we've got all the Muslim warriors responding. Xavier here says, Pearl, don't play dumb or try to spin this into I'm a victim play. You knew what you were doing. What was she doing? Some of us gave you the benefit of the doubt and assumed you were being genuine with your question, but your subsequent tweet on the subject confirmed otherwise. Stay in your lane. I don't know what tweet he's referencing that made her questions not genuine, but whatever she said, I don't see how that warrants a response from Mohammed Hijab saying, you have big ugly feet. That's called an ad hominem, and he would know that. He studied at Oxford, apparently.
I just want to fight you. That's what it is. Let's not waste time. Let's not talk about debates. Let's not talk about this and that. You're an unworthy opponent.
So someone rightly responds, stay in your lane. She has every right to be concerned about threats. And Xavier says she will not shag you. They're always projecting. I swear to God, they're always projecting. All they think about is sex, sex, sex. And they think that everyone else thinks the same way. Then Mohammed Hijab says, I thought you make content about women who victim play. Didn't think you'd be doing it yourself. The dog whistling is so loud and clear. It's safe to assume that a Muslim apologist is also sexist. Here's one reasonable Muslim in this whole thread. Bro, I think you went a bit aggressive. She knows nothing about Islam or the Prophet. I think you should have been more easy. But hold up, there's some hidden context here. You should have been kinder because she doesn't know anything about Islam. But had she known about Islam and asked the same question, then you could have been aggressive. But Xavier doesn't agree. He says, nonsense. There's a way to ask questions in etiquette. Your prophet married a child. There's no etiquette around asking that question. She asked, did your prophet date a child? What's wrong with asking that? She asked in a vile manner and followed it up with a vile tweet. She could reach out privately to a knowledgeable Muslim, but no, knowing it would farm engagement, took it to Twitter. Have more ghaira for your religion. He's saying have more jealousy for your religion. This toxic word ghaira is what they use to justify all the things that they do to women out of jealousy and protectiveness. Here's the infuriating thing. Muslims watch their prophet marry a child according to all the Sunni narratives, and then they expect people to privately walk on eggshells so to not bring up the topic in public because it offends Muslims. So you're offended by the act, not the manner that the question was asked in. I remember having a live stream about this topic and talking about all the excuses that apologists give for this marriage, and that video got my channel banned in Pakistan. What does that tell you about the state of the Muslim Ummah? Okay, here's another Muslim chiming in. Shahnawaz says, also, if you're sincerely interested in knowing the answer rather than getting engagement on Twitter, I can assure you Mohammed Hijab is one of our well-spoken and knowledgeable people. If you're genuinely seeking answers, just ask. Don't make a joke of yourself. What she just asked. And if Mohammed Hijab is one of your most knowledgeable people, this right here is my problem. I am sick and tired of this man being an icon by which Muslims are judged.
We can't stop the Muslim gangsters.
And it's not just about this man. There's so many men like him. Muslim Twitter is full of these examples. There aren't that many people calling him out on his behavior. And the ones that do are just doing it so softly, saying, this is an outsider. She doesn't know about Islam. You got to be kinder to her. But this is how they behave towards ex-Muslims or any other critics of Islam. If this is a representative of Muslims, then you see why people are afraid of Muslims? Well spoken, my ass. Here's someone else saying, well, the way you asked was disrespectful, not gonna lie. I wouldn't dare do that, especially when I can access reliable sources myself, like the sources on screen that say that he did indeed groom and marry a child. There are ways of asking questions, Pearls. Take his threats as a reminder for that, Miss Drama Queen. Again, the victim blaming. Let me remind you what she asked verbatim. Did Muhammad date a 9-year-old or not? Why is everyone arguing about this? He either did or he didn't. I don't see anything rude about this. If someone asked that question about me, did Aladdin date a 9-year-old or not? Why is everyone arguing about this? He either did or didn't. I wouldn't be offended by that. I'd be offended by the insinuation that some people think that I did. But if the answer is very clear, I'd say, no, I didn't. And no, I never would. It's not that big of a deal. I wouldn't go out of my way and say, I'm going to bully you like you were bullied in high school or whatever the hell he said. And something big feet. Ray says, not much of a threat if you ask me, but you come off as not very genuine when asking your questions. Everyone is talking about genuineness as a response to her pointing out that this guy called her names. That's the double standard. When a Muslim does something bad, they don't like pointing it out. But when someone else does something that offends Muslims, everyone's suddenly siding with the Muslim. Hijab bullied her, and all people could say is, you should have phrased the question better. And then we've got the apologist points, like Ammar. The age of consent in America was 7 years old until the 1960s. Blah, 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 blah. I've addressed this 1,000 times. These apologists can't seem to understand that two wrongs don't make a right. Just to say, in some other place, child marriage was okay, if that is even true. Therefore, you should shut up. That doesn't make up for it. We're talking about Prophet Muhammad, the ultimate symbol for morality for all times, and you point out specific laws in specific places? Laws change because we know better, but Muhammad's actions never changed, and Muslims will never acknowledge it as a bad thing. That's the problem. Think of not just Aisha, but every single child who has been married since then because the people think that it's okay because Muhammad did it. That is the problem. It happens to this day because people follow in Muhammad's footsteps. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there are some Muslims who are calling out Mohammed Hijab on this. Like this tweet that says, hey Pearl, a random Muslim here, please don't get offended with hijab. Though I don't like the wording of that. What does that mean? Please don't get offended by the offensive comment. Maybe they should have said what he said was offensive. Though you made a ridiculous accusation. Okay, never mind. I take it back. This was a stupid tweet. What ridiculous accusation? This is actually factual. Muhammad married a child. Muhammad married a child. Though you made a ridiculous accusation, we should not have responded with an equivalent insult. He lost his temper. I love how he collectively acknowledged here, we should not have responded with an insult. Though not equivalent in any way, because she didn't insult Muhammad. She didn't call him a pedophile like he is. She said, did he or did he not date a child? That's all she asked. I'm hoping we can have a civilized conversation altogether. Enough of sectarianism. I hate this whole, both sides are bad argument. I hate this whole sectarianism part. You just enabled the abusers by saying you said an equivalent insult when Pearl didn't insult anybody. You just asked her to not get offended. You told her how to feel about offensive comments while softly rejecting what Mohammed Hijab said. Here's another tweet. Musa says, is that how you ask a question about a person who's more dear to 2 billion people than their own family's wealth and anything in the world? If you're honest and want to learn, then go on a podcast with him and clear your doubts. Why would she go on a podcast with a guy who just insulted her? Yet again, she asked the question and everyone expects her to go out of her way to not offend people. I'm sorry that the icon for 2 billion people is a pedophile, but that's not her fault, is it? And here's the apologist for the threats. Abdu says, you're not being threatened for asking questions. You're being threatened for putting our prophet, his name and person out there to be mocked and ridiculed. You're just like any other Islamophobe out there. The difference is you keep your own Islamophobia discreet. And now we get to the Islamophobia accusation. So if you point out that their icon married a child or dated a child, then you're an Islamophobe. You're a hater. You're afraid. There's no fear in this question. They love throwing that word around, Islamophobia. Isn't it valid that when someone points out something that Muslims don't like to hear and gets threats back, that they would then not like Islam? Isn't that a valid reaction? Then why call it a phobia? Again, another tweet. Sorry, but I think the way you asked questions was a little inappropriate, and therefore it's not unlikely to see some comments like that, which, however, are not threatening you. Again, just trying to ask you to be more polite and respectful about something 1 billion people consider holy. Can we agree on the numbers at least? This is what people are politely reminding her of. I don't know what tweet the hunter is referencing, but I don't see how this tweet right here is simply asking her to be more polite. There's a few reasonable comments, but doesn't seem to be for Muslims. League of Shadows says, the fact that people are saying she needs to be more respectful instead of addressing the allegation is absolutely wild. Is it true or not? Thank you. Yes, it is true. Here's another on the Muslim side. Disrespects Prophet Muhammad and tweets lies about him. She didn't. The most important prophet of Islam. Gets backlash. Plays the victim. You are no different than the woke liberal people you love to make fun of. I'm not familiar with her. I don't know if she makes fun of woke liberal people. That's not my beef here. It's just funny that he thinks that she's saying a lie. And I think that's the crux of the problem. Muslims are sometimes angry to find out that their prophet groomed and married a child. So they take it out on whoever brings up that fact. Take it up with your prophet himself. Take it up with God. But don't take it out on the people who asked the question. She said no lies. Except maybe for the part that he dated. He didn't date. He just showed up at her house all the time until she was 6, and that's when he married her. Which sane, non-religious people would call grooming. Here's another loaded tweet. Mustaqim says, for a proper woman like yourselves, whatever the hell that means, please kindly ask a question with a proper manner. It's our prophet you are talking here. I am sure you will get a proper response also by doing so. They're all blaming her for asking the question in a way they didn't like. Again, to remind you of the answer, yes, he groomed and married a child. Masim, like many other Muslims, says, for being disrespectful, yes, you deserve the threats. Muslims don't joke around when it comes to Allah, Quran, and His prophets, not just Muhammad. By don't joke around, you mean that Muslims have a significant amount of people who would threaten and inflict harm on people who bring attention to things that they don't like in Islam. She didn't cause your prophet to groom a child. He did that all by himself. And your preachers are defending it. I have dissected so many lectures by Muslim preachers explaining all the reasons why Muhammad did it and it was okay. So who are the Muslims angry at exactly? Here's another Muslim tweet. No, Pearl, that was disrespectful. You do not ask questions like that. You do not tell her how to ask questions. Hijab was a bit tense in his reply. A bit tense? Gaslighting is the 7th pillar of Islam, I swear to God. Hijab was a bit tense in his reply, but I can't understand why. Of course you can. Of course you can. And that's the problem here. The problem is that the bad Muslims are always defended by the community. People don't call them out. They side with them. This wasn't a bit tense. This was just straight up bullying. You just don't say it like the way you did. Way off with that one, sis. God bless you and may he open your heart to Islam. Why the do you think someone would join Islam after the representative of Muslims, the well-spoken, well-mannered Mohammed Hijab, says that she has big feet and he will bully her like people did in high school? Why the would anyone join your religion after that? How delusional are you that you can't read the room right now? Again, yet another tweet asking her to phrase her question differently. And yet again, I remind you, no matter how she phrased her question, the facts don't change. Muhammad married a child. And here's another tweet repeating the same thing. You should have asked the question better. And this is the reason you got responses like this. Victim blaming. You're the reason you're getting threatening responses. And you're the reason that other Muslims are saying 100% you deserve the threats. That's all because of you, Pearl, is what the Muslims are saying in this tweets. But yet again, they deny it. But there is no threat for you as you claimed. Why don't you talk to Muslims in your podcasts? You are welcome with all. Yeah, because nothing says you're welcome like a bunch of threatening tweets from Muslims. Gaslighting is the 7th pillar of Islam. The 6th one is whataboutism. I've already spoken about that. And finally, we get to the apologetics. We've got conservative Muslim, aptly named, saying, "Hey Pearly, just keep in mind that the Prophet marrying a 9-year-old with the consent of her brother parents in the year 600 AD is not the same as your Catholic priests molesting children in 2023. Let it go." It's so silly how this is phrased. You've got skeletons in your closets, we've got some in ours. Just let it go and nobody gets harmed. First of all, I don't know if she's Christian or not. I have no idea. I haven't done the research on that. But it's funny how Muslims always just point out to Christianity being like, well, priests are pedophiles too, so let's just all walk away from this situation. It's like a Mexican standoff. Two wrongs don't make a right. I don't know if she's Christian. I don't know if she agrees with what the priests do. I don't know if she has called it out in the past or hasn't. But what the does that have to do with your prophet marrying a child? Then we got Xavier again saying 100%, even if the Prophet was alive today and married Aisha today, there would still be no issue with it. Okay, hold up. Before we get to that stupid line of apologetics, let's go back to conservative Muslims' tweets. The consent of her brother and parents in the year 600 AD. These people who make excuses for the Prophet, they don't think of her as a human with a future, with agency, with choices. They think of her as an object. She belongs to her male family members. That's why they mentioned brothers and father. I don't know if she had a brother. I don't know if her brother consented to any of this. But what the does her brother's consent have to do with her consent? And how can a child consent? A child cannot. A child doesn't understand what's going on. There's even a hadith where she said that she saw the people celebrating when Muhammad was married to her, and so she celebrated because children are impressionable. She didn't understand what the was going on. She just saw people cheering and laughing, and she said, oh, this is good. I guess I'm getting married to this guy. This is good for me. This reminds me of that other belligerent Muslim apologist, Farid Responds, because he said, what was it that he said? Oh yeah, how could it be rape when her parents consented? I don't think most Muslim preachers understand the concept of consent. I really don't think they do. So keep a wide berth. Now let's go back to Xavier. Xavier says even if the Prophet did it today, he would see no issue with it. She consented. A child cannot consent. Her father consented. Irrelevant. Her family consented. Also irrelevant. Her tribe consented. Also irrelevant. This is the problem with the Muslim community. They look at women as objects that belong to the males in her tribe. The network of people who have to consent on her behalf or can consent on her behalf extends as far as the tribe. That's who owns a woman in a Muslim community, not the woman, everyone around her. This is so indicative of the problems that women face in Muslim communities and Muslim countries. This is the biggest problem I have with religion. Xavier says it was okay to marry a child because above all, Allah said it's permissible. Don't you see how suspicious it is that every cult has a leader on top that says, God told me I can have as many women as I want, and I can have this child, and I can have that child, and people believe it because they think God said it. Don't you see that that mechanism is very rife for abuse? Don't you see that your prophet isn't special compared to all these other cult leaders who did the same exact thing? But no, your prophet's child diddling is better somehow because your God allowed it. I'm usually not this blunt and direct, but you just can't walk on eggshells around child marriage. Child marriage is bad for the kid, no matter who the else consents. And then he goes on to explain that secular laws don't even apply and Sharia applies is independent of everything else. That is what's scary about religion. It can suddenly drag you 1400 years back so you can make the same mistakes as they did back then. They didn't know better, now we do. Stop trying to drag us into the dark ages. That's where your prophet came from. I'm sorry, I'm a bit fired up about this because I'm annoyed. Every time I see something like this happen, Mohammed Hijab, no harm befalls him. He would threaten people, he would call people names, he would enable all the other sexist, misogynistic, child marriage apologists in his community, and everyone makes excuses for him. I'm really tired and sick of it. I'm tired of him enabling violent, aggressive Muslims and continuing to grow his platform despite being that vile. I know Twitter is not the best representation of how people are, so if you see a Muslim on the street, don't just assume that they're going to behave the way that hijab supporters behave. But it is still a problem that Muslim Twitter is a very, very toxic place. It's worse than many other communities, and the sentiments expressed today in these tweets are very common in the Muslim world, not just on Twitter. I'm tired of people like him being a representative of Muslims. I'm tired of them having a platform and a spotlight shown on them all the time. And that's part of why I have conversations with Muslims on my channel. I host Muslims from all walks of life to represent themselves. That way the big bad man is not their de facto representative. Because believe it or not, I care about Muslims and I don't want them to have this image. But I can't do anything to change the problem that is their prophet marrying a child, for example. What I can do is platform all the people who tell you either they don't agree with that or they don't think that it happened and they have their alternative reasons for believing so. That at least is a better image and more representative image of many Muslims than just those who make excuses for child marriage. Many of the ones I speak to still behave that way because they learn it from people like Mohammed Hijab. So I'm tired of him having a spotlight being unchallenged. So I urge him to come to this channel and have a conversation about whatever you want to talk about religion related. You want to talk about this issue of Muhammad marrying a child? I'd be more than happy to host you on my channel. And I can promise you, Hijab, even though I think you can't promise me the same, I can promise you that at no point will I make fun of your shoe size, your body size, or whatever else that has nothing to do with the topic, because that's not how I conduct conversations. So you're welcome. This is an open invitation. You're welcome to come to this channel and have a conversation with me, because I think I can teach you a thing or two about how to talk to people who don't agree with you without calling them names. I want my platform to grow so that the biggest representative of Muslims aren't Mohammed Hijab. I want my platform to grow because I do more to humanize Muslims than Mohammed Hijab does. When I bring them on, when I talk to them honestly, openly, and they tell me what they believe and they tell me why they believe and what's on their mind, I think that does a better job of representing Muslims than a guy who thumps his chest and says, child marriage is okay because my prophet did it, and you're rude for asking that question. So please help me grow my platform. If you like what I do, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Consider supporting me on Patreon or any other platform. Links are in the description. And thank you to the people who've supported me so far, my patrons, my YouTube members, and everyone else who's been following my content. Despite my channel being very small, especially compared to bigger channels like Mohammed Hijab, I think I've done more of a net positive effect than he has. And we're proud of that. So thank you again to all my supporters. And as always, think critically and think for yourself.